Hello! Today I want to talk about scoring tracks and the graphic design choices that you can make to make the best scoring track for your game. Let's get started. So here are my rules of thumb whenever I'm designing a score track. You can be clever, you can be concise, and you can be clear, but you should really prioritize clarity first, and then conciseness, and then cleverness. If you don't prioritize those correctly, say for example, if you're clever first and then clear later, you can get a scoring track that is actually kind of unplayable. You really want people to be able to assess that information clearly and quickly. So let's look at a few examples. First off, you have an around the board score track, like in Ticket to Ride or Lords of Waterdeep, or in the game that I laid out, Chimera Station. That's really nice if you have a lot of mid-game scoring, because then it keeps all of the score track and all the scoring information very clear and readily available and accessible to all players at any time. Another kind of score track is the Serpentine or winding path that you may see in games like Carcassonne or Libertalia. Now those are a little bit more controversial. A lot of folks don't like them because they're obviously less clear about who is in the lead. Now the thing I would always recommend with Serpentine paths is to make sure that you have your bends be very clear. You want to make sure that players know that they are rounding a corner, and also to keep the paths very far apart from one another. So if it bends, you want plenty of margin in between the spaces when they're going from left down to the right. Never intersects or crosses over itself or any wackiness like that. You want to be absolutely crystal clear. Now, lastly, there is the decimal score track, which is generally what I favor if I'm going to make a separate score track. 10 rows in 10 columns. If you don't have a lot of space, you can cut this in half so that it's 5 spaces per row, and that's totally fine too. We use that in Battle of the Ball when we have very limited space to fit a score track in that box. Now there's one other type of scoring track that I want to talk about because it's frequently seen in card games where there's not a lot of space to put a big giant board just to keep track of your score. This is the dial score track where you have 2 cards, one overlaid on top of the other. The top one is the tens digit and the bottom one is the ones digit. So if you want to show 16 points, you would turn the tens card so that tens would be facing where you can read it, and you shift it up and down the ones card to until it indicates the 6, thereby creating 16 points. I wouldn't recommend this type of scoring unless your scores are within, say, 20, 30. And before we go, a couple little best practices that I would always recommend if you're laying out a new scoring track. One, make sure that you're consistent in the sizing of the spaces. For example, if your 5s and 10s are a little bit larger than the rest of the spaces, or a different color, for example, that's totally fine as long as you're consistent about that and you keep doing that regularly. 2, number every space. Don't make people guess what their current score is if it's in between one of the 5s or in between the 10s. And 3, and this is kind of a personal thing, I really like it when I'm able to see the number on the scoring space, even if my scoring token is actually on it. But that's a personal thing. If you can make sure that the numbers are visible when people have their pieces on it, I would certainly like it. Thank you. So that's a quick overview of score tracks. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you find that useful for your game. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the comments. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and I really hope you enjoyed this. Thanks very much. Bye.